Hi there, my name is Amy. I am the dyer behind Pancake and Lulu Yarn and Fiber. Welcome to my podcast. I am coming to you today from Princeton, New Jersey, and it is a very overcast, rainy day today. So I have a ring light set up. I'm not wearing my glasses because it reflects in the glasses, and I hope the lighting isn't too strange. Usually I use just natural light, but it's too dark today. So I wanted to come and talk to you today about a little different format than my usual podcast. Today I thought it'd be fun to focus on my Advent yarn tasting calendar. And yes, it is May, the end of May, and I have already started dyeing my Advent calendars for this December. And when I say Advent calendar, most people know what an Advent calendar is, but it is not it is a countdown starting on the first day of December. And so it's a countdown to Christmas, but it also is not a religious calendar in the sense that anybody can get an Advent calendar, especially my Advent calendar. There's nothing religious in it. It's for everybody. And it's a lot of fun. So I encourage you, even if you are not Christian and do not celebrate Christmas, to still try an Advent calendar because it's a wonderful way to give yourself a little gift every day of December. And it's just really fun to open them. And it is 25 mini skeins and an optional full-size skein, plus several other add-ons. But I thought it'd be fun to explain to you a little bit about how I design it, what goes on behind the making of it. I have done it now for, I think this is my 5th year. The last 2 years, it has been a yarn tasting Advent calendar because I have used festive treats and drinks recipes inspired each colorway of the calendar. So I thought it's been really, really fun to do that for the last 2 years. So again, I'm doing it this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep doing it every year like this, but it's been such a fun theme for my calendar that people have had so much fun with it. And so I thought I would do it again this year, and maybe this will be the last year of it, but we'll see. If you've never had an Advent calendar before, I thought it would be fun to share a little bit about my calendar from last year, since I can't really share the colors from this year because it's all a surprise. So that's a huge part of the fun, is each day opening up the little package and seeing what you're going to get each day. And so I'm right now in the middle of designing it and dyeing it. I started dyeing it, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about that process also because I think it's interesting. I don't know if any, I don't think I've watched any other podcasts or heard much about what goes into the planning and dyeing of Advent calendars from other dyers. So I thought it might be fun for you if you're a dyer and you're thinking about doing it, or if you are just, a knitter or a crocheter and you would like to have one, but you've never had one before. This might give you a little more information about it. And this year, I'm also going to be doing a fiber Advent calendar as well for the first time. A lot of people have requested this in the past couple of years, and I've always been a little overwhelmed with just the yarn Advent calendar because it's so much work. But this year, I feel like I'm starting early enough. I love doing an Advent project. It's kind of a lot of knitting in December, but it's a really fun ritual to do every day and to try to keep up with. I've never kept up with it. I always get behind, but I always end up finishing the project in January, I think, is usually. I don't think I've ever gone past January though. You're so excited to try to keep up with it that I think that kind of motivates you. So many people do it, and we've all shared our progress together on Ambah O'Brien's Ravelry page, which she has I think it's probably the biggest Advent season knit along. I think it's just, she calls it now the festive make along or knit along. So Ambah O'Brien is a designer who has designed, she's a wonderful designer out of Australia, and she has designed many, many projects that are particularly good for Advent calendars. So they incorporate 24 or 25 skeins, mini skeins of yarn. So she has a huge knit along group that is how I first heard of Advent calendars, actually. The first year that I joined in the Ambah Festive Make Along, I did not have an Advent calendar. I just used scraps from my own stash. And it was a lot of fun to put that together for myself. I didn't put it together the way a calendar is. I just kind of grabbed from my pile, my bins of yarn. I thought it would be fun to share with you my process for designing my festive yarn tasting Advent calendar. And also this year I have a fiber tasting Advent calendar that is for spinners and felters. So I will put up a picture of the mood boards that I'm using this year. So I have had this pre-order up since the end of last year, actually. I find that in the Ravelry group that we use, it's at Ambah O'Brien's Festive Make Along, I think it's called. It's a huge, huge group on Ravelry, and we all are knitting Ambah patterns. In order to be part of her knit along, you use one of her patterns, but she has like 20 different patterns or something for Advent calendars, maybe even more than that. She has a lot of patterns. She comes out with several new patterns each year, and she's been doing this for maybe 7 years or something. She has a lot of patterns that are perfect for Advents. So in order to be a part of her make-along, you just have to pick one of her patterns, and then you choose an Advent calendar, or you can work from stash, which is what I did the first year. But most people in that group use an Advent calendar from an indie dyer, or many of the people in the group purchase multiple Advent calendars from multiple different dyers. And it's a lot of fun to see everybody's Advent calendars as they unwrap them each day. There's even a spoiler thread where you can go look at, and some people completely open their Advent calendar as soon as they get it, and there's a spoiler thread for that. People have so much fun collecting the Advent calendars, and they don't even use them that year. They might use them the following year. They might resell them. There's a big community of people that do all sorts of things with the Advent calendars. I start selling them then because it seems like it's a good time. People are really interested and excited, and they've seen your Advent calendar just be opened, so they're really excited to get in on the next year's one. So while it seems super early to do it, and it is, I have found that a lot of people really appreciate the opportunity to get in on it then, and then they kind of forget about it. I think some people too will use Christmas money that they get, spend it on the next year's Advent. Then it's like a gift that they get for themselves early on, and they've completely forgotten sometimes that they've even ordered it, or they're surprised or excited when it comes in the mail, and they don't have to worry about getting it because a lot of dyers, they don't have to worry about dyers selling out, because a lot of us do sell out of our Advent calendars because it's become such a collectible and fun thing for people to do. So I thought I would start out by showing you first my past projects, and then talk to you a little bit about last year's Advent calendar, and tell you just a little bit about what I've started doing for this year's calendar. I'm not going to give anything away for this year's calendar because the big part of it is the surprise, the everyday opening of a little package. The first year that I did it, I made this, which is called the Adventurous Wrap. And this was my project. It's a very long, I loved this project actually. It's a very long project. It's almost like is it two? I think you do it in 2 parts. It actually reminds me a little bit of the half and half wrap in a way. if you know what that pattern is. Most people do. Anyway, this is, where did I divide? I forget now. Oh, I think you graph it together, graph it together like in the middle. And it's a reversible wrap. It's really, it's actually a beautiful wrap. I would actually consider doing this pattern again. This was the first Advent knit along that I did, and I just used yarn from my stash. It's all my hand dyed yarn, but I didn't have an Advent calendar. I didn't even know about Advent calendars when I made this. This I completed, this was the December, I started it in 2017, December. So, and I finished it January 22nd. So it took me a little longer than you're supposed to be able to finish it in one, during the Advent season, but I didn't. I never have been able to keep up with it. But anyway, that is my first project. That was where I discovered Advent calendars, and I thought to myself, I should do one next year. So the nice thing about this is that I was using stash, but the thing that I really missed out on was that I didn't have the little Advent mini skein to open every day like the people that had Advent calendars did. And I thought, well, next year I'm going to do my own Advent calendar for people, and I'm going to knit something with my Advent calendar. So that was, let me see what the next one I did. I think the next one I did is the one I'm wearing. Yeah, this is called the Adventurer Scarf. And this was my first Advent calendar too. It's a very long lace scarf. Am I showing you the right side? It's actually hard to say which is, this is the right side. And each mini skein kind of faded into, not totally perfect fade, but generally it's kind of a fade from this dark purple. I think that was the last day actually, so I'm going backwards. These pinks and these very pretty neutrals into this gold. And this was my first Advent calendar. Yeah, the beginning of it was, pretty sure it was this gold side. That was day one. And this is a nice project because actually I don't think this took me quite as long. I remember I took this traveling. Yeah, I started December 1st and finished December 31st on this because this project, the Adventurer Scarf, is a little bit of a smaller project. I remember having a lot of leftovers. Almost always you have leftovers of your mini skein. Except I remember, well, one of them I used almost everything. And that was my first Advent calendar. That year I did only do 18 Advent calendars for people to sell. So my third Advent project that I did using my own calendar, and I can't remember how many I made this time. I might have done, I did sell more than, I think I decided to do more than 18, but I can't remember if this was when I started doing 100. I think I might have done 50. I can't really remember actually how many I did this year, but in 2019, this was my Advent calendar, which actually you could see all of the yarns. Which day was the first? I think this was the beginning was, I'm sorry. Beginning were these blues. Wait, this is the wrong side too. Yeah. The beginning were these blues, and it went across to the end where this was this golden yellow. And this is a really pretty colorway. And this scarf pattern is called the Adventuring Wrap. A lot of Ambah's patterns have the word Advent in them, and so they're hard to keep track of which one is which. This one's called the Adventuring Wrap, and this was just kind of a fade from one color to the next. Sort of a fade, but with a lot of colors in it too. And I usually do a combination. I like to do a combination of semi-solid colors and speckly colors. My speckly colors can be, I think that I'm leaning more towards doing less dramatic speckles. Like there will be speckles, but they won't be like speckles of all different colors in there. Okay, after the adventuring wrap, I did the following year. Let me just get to it. Oh, it was called the Radvent wrap, and this was in 2021. And that is the one that Samantha is wearing. And this was a cool pattern. This advent calendar actually was probably my wildest colorways. I feel like this one, while it's pretty, it's like kind of too many different colors. So I'm kind of not doing just a little hint, my advents are not going to be like this many different colors in it. I just feel like as putting all these colors together is tricky. It's kind of easier, and in a way it's a nicer finished object, I think, when the colors aren't too wild. Although, I mean, some of these are a little wild. That was in 2021. That's called the Radvent wrap. And after that, oh, I missed one. I totally missed one. Wait a minute. I did not show you the Radvent throw in 2020. This was a really neat project, and this was the project that I actually adapted a fingering weight project into a DK weight project, because my yarn, my advent was a DK advent, and I wanted to do a DK advent that year because I felt like I had never done one in DK before, and I also felt like it's less knitting because it's less, you can create a bigger fabric with less yarn, so it would take less time, and that's true. And I was able to keep up. No, I wasn't. I started December 1st and ended January 27th for this one, but this was the 2021. And I love it because it's a throw, and I was really excited to do a throw. It's quite large. These are the colors from that advent. And it's a modular knit, so you could arrange the colors for this pattern however you want, which also appealed to me a lot because I thought it would be fun to do almost like a checkerboard with the pinks and the blues. So it was like pinks. The colors in here are pinks and purples and greens and blues. And so I kind of checkerboarded it. And then I added a whole nother row. That's actually why it took me a little longer. I added a whole nother row of some colors that I wanted to add. Like that pink, I added that later because I was like, I needed a pop of pink. So this is done in a grid-like pattern. And even though this is a knitted pattern, which was pretty cool. It's a lot like what you could do a crochet pattern like this very easily as well, being modular like that. I found this pattern actually, I made a lot of mistakes while I was doing this. It was a little frustrating at times to keep up with all these eyelets in a circular kind of, I mean, it was a while ago, so I can't remember too well, but I do remember feeling like I could never get the hang of this square. I made so many, of course I did get the hang of it, but I remember at times feeling a little frustrated. I'm really happy with the final result though. It's a beautiful, beautiful throw. So that was the Radvent throw, and I almost forgot about that one. And last year's was my absolute favorite. This pattern is called the Fizzalicious, which is not it was an advent pattern by Ambah, but actually all of these are by Ambah O'Brien. I don't know if I mentioned that in the beginning. I might have implied it because I did all these for her make along, but they're all by Ambah. And this was my absolute favorite one called Fizzalicious. This was last year's advent calendar yarn tasting. And here are the colors of this one. And it's a beautiful, really cool pattern. Oh, my pillow just fell over. And this is a gorgeous wrap. And this I did hold, it's very thick and cozy. I did hold a fingering weight double to make it a DK. I think this pattern is written for DK. Oh, she has a DK version and a fingering weight version. Again, I wanted to do DK because I felt like I'd be able to keep up better with it. And I did finish this actually December 28th, it says. So I kept up pretty well. And it was fun because actually I used the full-size skein that I made to go with that calendar. Each calendar, Every year I do a full-size skein that kind of matches. I try to make it go with all the colors, which can be challenging because sometimes there's so many different colors in it. But yeah, it's usually, it tends towards something a little more neutral that has some colors in it so that it can work. I try to get it to work with all the colors. So this actually was a beautiful, really successful full-size skein, I think, because it went really well with all the colors. And I held it, so it's a fingering sparkle. This was the sparkle base, or is the sparkle base, held double for the color parts. And then for the parts that use the full skein, the fizzes, she calls them the fizzalicious fizzes. They were really cool little bunching stitch. I forget what you call this stitch. I'm not sure what you call it. She calls them fizzes. And I held the sparkle fingering weight, full skein, along with a skein of, I think it was just undyed Surrey alpaca. I think it was Surrey. Yeah, it's definitely Surrey because it's so soft. And so that made it, the fizzes are actually fuzzy too, fizzy fuzzies. So that was fun. So that's how I made this, and I did the DK version, but using fingering weight yarn. And this was definitely my favorite project of all of them. I loved it. It was very, very easy to do because it's a lot of garter stitch. The fizzes are pretty simple, actually, and with a lot of impact, and they didn't take that long either. So yeah. It is I'm really glad I started out with only 18. If you're a dyer thinking of doing an advent calendar, it's a good idea to start out sort of small. Now I do 100 advent calendars, just to give you an idea of scale. I don't want to do any more than 100. It is so much work winding. Really, the majority of the work is not the dyeing. The majority of the work is actually winding the mini skeins and labeling them. A lot of advent calendars I've noticed recently that I've seen, because we share a lot on the Advent, the Festive Make-Along group on Ravelry, Ambah's group, about different advent calendars. That's part of the fun of doing her make-along, is seeing all the different dyers' advent calendars. And I noticed that a lot of people, I've even heard a lot of customers talk about this, a lot of dyers do not label their advent minis individually anymore, or maybe never did. And they give kind of a card with the names. Sort of, it's a lot easier to do that. Let's just put it that way, rather than wrapping each mini skein with a label. I still do label all of my mini skeins, and it is a lot of extra work. But I do know that the people that buy my Advent, and other people have talked about this on the group, that they really do appreciate, most people really appreciate them being individually labeled, because a lot of people save them and don't make something right away. So if they open them on the day with the number, there's no way for them to, unless they go to the extra trouble of marking down and making a label for it, which one it is, for future reference if they say want to sell it or use it in the future, however they want to do it. A lot of people appreciate having those mini skeins individually labeled with their name on them. And I just feel like it's nice to do that too. I know I would prefer it. So I do that, and it takes a lot of extra time. So in any case, that is part of the reason why I only want to ever make 100, unless I had like a lot of help, and I don't have any help doing it myself. So I only make 100 of them. I have always sold out. Usually each year I've sold out a little sooner than the last one, because people find out about them and want to get one. So I'm anticipating selling out again this year. My mini skein advent calendar is a little bit different than a lot of people's also, because I offer 5 different bases. A lot of people have different preferences for what they like. People are very excited to find a variety of bases. And the bases I sell are the Euro 4-ply fingering, which is a tightly spun 4-ply 4-ply yarn. And that is the most popular of all of the bases that I sell. The second most popular base is probably the nylon fingering base, and that is merino wool with nylon content. That a lot of people like that for socks because it's a little bit of a more thought to be a more durable yarn for socks. And that is the second most popular base that I sell. Although this year, the one that has really been very popular, which surprised me, is the DK base, which I also have a DK base, which is nylon DK. And that is a very nice base. I think the reason I like the nylon DK base is because since it is a bit of a thicker yarn, you have less knitting to do each day for the Advent period. However, there aren't as many patterns for Advents made with DK yarn. So that's something you should be aware of. Like, it might be good to sort of identify what pattern I know Ambah has a couple of patterns. You can also adapt patterns too for the nylon DK. If you're experienced at all, it's not that hard to adapt, especially a shawl pattern especially one that's made for Advents, to just do it in DK. Fourth base that I sell is the Sparkle Mini Fingering. Sparkle Fingering. I love the Sparkle Fingering. That's my favorite. I used that last year and I'm also going to use it this year. I just think the sparkle is so pretty for a festive wrap or whatever the project ends up being. I think the sparkle I just really enjoy. And the other thing to realize about if you're using fingering and you decide you want to do a DK or a heavier pattern, a pattern that calls for DK or a heavier weight yarn, is you can just double the fingering weight yarn. So you actually have more flexibility, I think, when you get a fingering weight yarn for doing these Advent projects, because you may not know what project you want to do yet. But if you get a fingering weight yarn, you can do a fingering weight pattern, or you can double it, hold it double to do a DK weight pattern. And it's very easy to do that. You wind it into a center pull ball with a ball winder, and then you just pull from the outside and the inside at the same time. And it's very simple. It doesn't get tangled or anything. And that's how you can easily work from one skein of yarn, holding it double. So I recommend actually getting a fingering weight because of that, because I think it's more flexible. But a lot of people have gone for the DK weight this year, which is exciting. I only have 2 left in my shop right now. So the last base that I sell for the yarn mini skeins is the fingering, single fingering weight, which is beautiful, beautiful yarn. It's just a single ply. So it's actually really beautiful I think it looks great for shawls in particular. It's kind of a delicate looking yarn. It's a tightly spun yarn. I mean, it's a strong yarn still, but it's very, very pretty, beautiful base. And some people absolutely love the fingering, the single fingering, I should say. So those are the 5 bases that I sell. And this year I am doing my entire calendar also in merino roving as well. So for the merino roving, it is non-superwash, so it's feltable. So that is something, it's important to know that a lot of people like to use roving for making felted projects as well. So it's totally feltable. It felts beautifully, actually. And it is going to be, I'm only doing 15 of them. I'm actually making 16 and keeping one for myself because I'm very excited to spin it each day. That's what I want to do each day of December. In addition to I'm probably going to knit a project as well with the Advent yarn calendar, but I'm going to spin each day. I think that'll be really, really fun to try that. So I brought 1 ounce to show how big it is, because it is 1 ounce. It's pretty good amount, actually. This is 1 ounce of merino roving. This is just a random colorway. This was actually the colorway for this month's yarn club, or yarn and fiber club. This was the fiber. And it's actually a pretty large amount to spin each day. This is 1 ounce. And yeah, so each day you'll get one of these, and which is a nice amount to spin. It's not overwhelming at all. And then there's an optional 4-ounce matching roving that will go with the whole calendar, the way that I offer a full-size skein of yarn in the base that you choose for the yarn tasting advent calendar as well. So it's sort of the same idea as you get a 4-ounce. This is 1 ounce, but you get 25 of these. I guess what I can do now is show you last year's advent calendar and give you an idea of what kinds of things people get in their advent calendars that I give as little surprises along the way too. This is last year's advent calendar, and you can get the bag too. So this is an add-on that you can do. This was last year's bag, which I ice dyed these cloth cotton bags. I love this style bag. I've used this style the past several years because it fits the advent calendar very, very well. But each year I've done something different with the bag. I love this ice dyed bag, so I don't know, I might do an ice dyed bag again. We'll see. So that's the bag that you can order as an extra. I should say this is last year's bag. This year's bag will be different. And when you get your calendar, I don't have one that's all wrapped up, so I can't show you. Oh, yes, I can. I can show you a photo of last year's full advent calendar, how it comes when it's all wrapped up. So I can put that photo in here. I've done last year and the year before too, I did a menu. So the menu is a way for you to look at the names of all the this is last year's advent calendar names and days, and then each one is linked to a recipe. So this QR code you can scan with your phone, and it's a good idea to block off the other, like the one you're not doing, so that your phone can identify which one you're trying to get to. That's a tip I got last year. This will take you to the different recipes. And as well as this, so this is a nice little reference to have. Like I said, each mini skein is labeled also. So here's an example of one of last year's mini skeins. This one is day 9 matcha bark. And this is in the Euro base. This is the most popular base. The reason I have I have a whole calendar left from last year that is unused, and it was a really sad story actually. Somebody, I don't know what happened to the person that bought this calendar. It was returned to me, and I tried to contact the customer. She was a customer that had bought things from me before, and I had sent them to the same address. It was a very puzzling situation. She never got back to me, even though I reached out several times to get her advent calendar. So this was an extra one I have. And maybe I will end up giving this away this year. This was last year's full skein, which is a really gorgeous, this color is really pretty. It was called French Chocolate Mendiant, and it is the colorway that is in between each color in here, held together with just a plain white Surrey alpaca lace. So it was the full skein. So when you order an advent calendar, you can order just the basic no frills version of the advent calendar. So you would just get, actually there are still some frills that come along with it because you get some goodies that are tucked into it. But you would just get the 25 mini skeins that are each individually wrapped in brown paper and labeled with the number of the day that you open it. And you get the menu. And this is going to be similar to this year's. And then each day is based off of a recipe, inspired by a recipe that is usually a colorful drink or treat. So what's a lot of fun to do is make some of these treats and drinks along the way and share pictures of them. I've had a lot of people do that, and I love to do it and share it with you guys. So you can look forward to that with all new recipes this year. And that would be the basic. The basic calendar comes with some goodies. They're little goodies like let's see, last year we had, these are not going to be repeated, but they were really fun. A little lip balm, a little sticky notes, tea, a little soak sample. I got, these are just little things that go in each day. This is a little hand lotion. This was just a little sticker. So just little freebies that come in each day's, little washi tape, Christmas washi tape, which is fun. Some tea and, oh, this really cute little snowman progress keeper that I had a maker on Etsy do a bunch of these for me to add in. And so that's just to give you an idea of some of the little freebies that come with the very basic no frills one. Then if you want, you can add on the full skein, the bag, the other add-ons that I have from last year. The ones that I did last year were, this was really, really cute. I made these macaron 5 little stitch markers, which I found these little macaron cases, and I was so excited because they were just perfect for holding some really cute little stitch markers. So last year I did, well, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see these very well. I made so many of these. They're like little treats and candies. So like a little lemon. So these are really cute. This is a little cupcake one. I don't know if I can. Little kiwi. Little clay stitch markers, a little set of 5. So that was last year's stitch marker. This year they will be different, but I was really excited to find these little macaron cases because they're so cute. So that was, and then of course I had to call them markerons. I just love designing like marketing stuff. I don't know. I think that's what I should have probably been if I had a more traditional career. So, oh, the other little add-on that you can get, last year I did, so I don't know if you know this, but I used to be a candle maker. Some of you who've known me for a very long time might know that before I've always been into knitting my whole entire life, but before I had a business involving fiber, I actually had a candle making business when I was in my 20s. And so I decided to make candles to have as an add-on to the Advent calendar. And it was really fun to do this again on a larger scale. So last year I made these candles, and I started branded it as Woolly Lux Candle Company, which I have sort of been meaning to list these. I still have a few extras. This one was called Hibernator. It smells so good. It's an Egyptian linen and lavender scent. And I love the little labels I made. And these really pretty jars. These, I don't have more of these, so I have a few left from last year that I should probably list. And then I'm going to do a new candle for this year. So it'll be a different candle, but it'll be similar to this. And that is, I think that's all the extras. Let me see, stitch marker, candle. Oh, the pin. I almost forgot the pin. So I've done the last couple of years, I've done pins with Katrinkles, a maker in Rhode Island who does these wood laser cut items. And this was last year's pin. So that was really cute. I think this year, I'm not sure, it'll be similar in a way, but I think I found a company. I love working with Katrinkles. They're great, but I found a company that I like using wood for the pins because it's much more sustainable than those enamel pins. And I have many enamel pins myself, but I've decided, and I used to have one that I would sell, but they're made in China, and I'm trying to get away from that kind of a product. So I really love the fact that these wooden pins are sustainable. And I love working with Katrinkles because she's in the US and not that far in Rhode Island. I may work with her again, but I also found a company in England actually that makes wooden pins that are colorful, which I love. So I might work, I'm going to find out about those pins too. So I'm not sure if it will be, it'll still be wooden, but it might be a more colorful pin than this. If not, it will be another Katrinkles pin. So anyway, I have that, and it says 2022 on it. So it always says the date, and it's my holiday pin. So, but I think I'm going to go with the color. And a lot of people just love getting all the little extra goodies. So the fiber calendar will be just like the mini skein calendar in terms of being inspired by the same recipe. So it's like we're all going to have the same colorways, even though it's just going to be on the fiber base instead of the mini skein. So it'll be very similar in the sense that it will have all the goodies, all the options, and yeah. One of the things that is, I think, really fun about dyeing them is it's very tricky to come up with 25 colors that look really good together unless it's a very, very subtle fade, which is an option. You know, you could do, I had one year a calendar from another dyer that I very much enjoyed, but each day almost looked the same exact as the next day, which is okay, but it's kind of not as much fun personally. I loved the finished project that I did with that. I'll show it on another episode. I've also gotten, actually, from Hedgehog Fibers, their advent calendar was very random. So each day didn't go with the next day. Each day was very different, you know, and so it was not it wasn't something that I wanted to use all the mini skeins together in a project for. I loved getting them, and it was fun, and I've used them in many different projects along the way, and some of them go with each other, so you can use, like, maybe, you know, 5 would go really well together or what have you, but a lot of them didn't really go together. So I thought that was interesting too. It's been very educational to get other people's advent calendars for me, which I've really enjoyed doing. Mine, I tend to try to make them all go together and flow. I feel like this one was the least flowy of all the ones that I've done, so I'm veering a little bit away from that and going more towards, well, I loved last year's, but it did have a lot of colors in it. I think this year's is going to have fewer colors and more shades and more tonals that will blend well with some of the colors in a way. Maybe more, not color-wise, but more in the direction of my first advent calendar, which I think was really pretty because it didn't have a lot of huge number of different colors, but it had a lot of shades of the same colors. So I'm not saying this is the color, this is not the colors that the new advent calendar is, but it's, in a sense, it'll be more harmonious, I guess I'd say, like that. So that's the goal anyway. And my process is very much like I will dye several of these colors multiple times because I try to start out very light and then see what I have and then make adjustments. And I'll have to take those colors, some of them, and re-dye them with an overlay of another color or an overlay of speckles or partially overlaid to make them blend well together, because I think that's my goal, is to have a flowing calendar. So anyway, I hope that explained I hope that was a good explanation of what the advent calendars are like. I will put pictures up of last year's colors and kind of group of them together here for you so that you can get an idea of what last year's looked like if you didn't see it. I love to share every single day of December. I share the color of the day, so that's a lot of fun. People get to see the color I did, whether they bought an advent calendar or not. It's kind of fun to get the recipe. I link to the recipe and share the recipe, and I have a page devoted to that on my website. I still have the pages up from the last 2 years with the recipes for you to find and use, and just an easy way to get to them. I hope to make them more on camera so that I can share the process of making them. I did a few of them like that last year just on Instagram, but I think like in a Reels format, but it will be fun to share some of those during this YouTube. Hopefully I'll have time to do that. So thank you so much for joining me. And next week's podcast will have probably back to more of the normal format. Oh, it'll be the start of the Knit Collage Knit Along, make along, which will be really fun. And so we start that on Monday. So I will podcast after that. So I'll show you my projects as they get started and everything else that I'm doing and all the other fun stuff. So have a great week. Take care. And thanks so much for watching. And if you're new here and you haven't already, please consider subscribing and giving me a thumbs up. I love to hear your comments if you have any. If you have any other questions about the Advent calendar that I didn't answer, please ask them in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.